So Will played John Wilkes Booth in the musical entitled Assassins, and you also played Woody in Disney's musical of Toy Story. As a theatrical actor, how do you approach your role in terms of objective versus subjective?
Oh, did we not answer this? Well, John Wilkes Booth is a great example, right? Because, you know, there's a thing called method acting, and sometimes method acting can be very dangerous. You know, as much as people say, oh, you know, it wasn't because of that. Heath Ledger is a good example, right? The Joker did kind of destroy him. And Jack Nicholson warned him. He said, hey, just to let you know, be careful because the Joker will destroy you if you don't allow it to. And, you know, he kept himself in a room and did all that. So John Wilkes Booth is a great example because obviously I couldn't let that take over me. So then I'd be trying to assassinate a president. But the crazy thing is John Wilkes Booth, when I played him, I did a ton of research on him. And I found out that he was 27 when he assassinated Lincoln, and I was 27 when I did the role. I found out that he had kind of the similar experience or a similar life than that I did when I grew up. And so I kind of played the whole, if I was in a different situation, would I have kind of ended up the same way? But you have to be careful about that. You know, when you put yourself in a role in that way, you have to create some sort of objectivity because you're portraying a real person. But at the same time, you have to have a subjectivity because you want to bring your own thing to it. And of course, because you're not the person, all you can do is trying to get into the mind of the person. And then that's kind of where it comes from. Woody was interesting because I've told you this, Trevor, before, but not only was I doing, it was probably the most intense character development I've ever done. And it was because not only was I having to do a character development of learning how to be a toy, but it was learning how to be a toy that had abandonment issues. Because that's the whole thing with Woody, is he is dealing with abandonment, and that's why he's afraid, you know, that Buzz is going to be better than him. And so that was interesting because obviously, you know, I watched the movies, but I had to get into the mindset behind that of where would that begin as far as the abandonment? Like what would I be feeling if I was in that kind of position? And it's funny because it's like it's Woody from Toy Story, right? But it was so funny because the guy who played my Buzz opposite me was like a Shakespearean actor. And, you know, I don't want to toot our own horn or anything like that, but I will tell you that the scene where Buzz found out that he was a toy made people cry. He was that convincing that he had his world crushed, right? And I will say that everything that we saw, because we watched videos of past musicals that had done that. He was on the cruise line. And they all played him kind of goofy. But our director wanted to bring a realism to it. And that's what I really appreciated about him, because we played it real. And you know, as Woody, I was a toy that was dealing with abandonment. So it wasn't like you were watching toys on stage. It was like you're watching adults going through actual abandonment issues, adults realizing that their entire life was a lie. And that's why people were so engaged and into it. But once again, right, like John Wilkes Booth is a great example of like objectivity to subjectivity. Excuse that. That was my lasagna timer because my wife is making me an awesome dinner. Google, stop. There it is. So anyways, and I'm going to have to text her about this later. But John Wilkes Booth, who was a real person, I had to have some objectivity. Woody, who is not a real person, right, is a toy. I was able to have a little bit more freedom on how I played that role.
Nice.
Interesting.
Very awesome. Thank you for sharing that, man. Yeah. So moving on, people have used art as a means to say this is reality, but this is bad art, right? Art can be very deceptive. And I wanted to ask Sean, why is art much more powerful when being used for good or evil, whether intentionally or unintentionally?
Well, because art has the ability, it is supposed to be designed to move the human soul. And that's why it can be an amazing tool to teach you about truth, goodness, and beauty. That's what true art is. It should teach you about what is true, what is good, what is actually good, and what is beautiful in life. And the problem with bad art is that its intentions can be to deceive you about what is true. It can give you the lie. It can lie to you and tell you what things that are actually bad and make it seem as though they're good. And that's what poison is, by the way. Poison is, or that's what
rat poison is.
Lie is, in a sense, because if you don't have to, it's rat poison, because rat poison is 99.9% good food. So they can slip in little pieces of relativism or subjectivism and put in moral relativism and whatnot, and make it seem as though this is totally fine, this is good, it's just funny or whatever. But it's that little bit of poison, it's that 0.1% of poison that kills the rat. And then finally they can say to us that, oh no, see, this ugliness is it's beautiful, this is great, this is a wonderful thing. And so this is one of the dangers with art. Is art can be used to move agendas and to move cultures and to change minds in one direction or another. So that's what propaganda. So it can be used as propaganda, and that's why it can be amazing and also very dangerous, because it can really show us what is true and good and beautiful, or it can be used for evil to deliver some poison into our system and make us a sicker society by telling the lie loud enough and long enough so that people will believe it. And that's what Hitler said. Hitler literally said that if you tell a lie loud enough and long enough, people will believe it. And that's what's, I think, happening with a lot of our entertainment these days. It's a lot of special effects and, visually, done very well. But at the same time, the philosophy and the heart behind it is corrupt. The ideologies behind it are taking important issues and minimizing them as though they're not that big of a deal, and then taking things that are minimal and making those things out to be a big deal. So it's flipping things on its head, and I think that's the problem with it. It's very easy to corrupt society and minds with, good music, beautiful imagery, and then toxic ideologies that they infuse into the storylines.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
if you agree more.
I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Invention of Lying. I haven't myself, but I heard somebody talk about this when they were talking about the idea of what you were saying, entertainment. If you think about like movies and television is literally lying. And the whole idea is that in that world, a lie has never been told. Nobody lies. He's like the first person to say ever lying. But they show movie theaters, and I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe like the only thing they show is like just two people having a conversation, because you can't tell a movie without lying as far as fiction, right? If you think about the logic behind it. But I did want to add just one thing, if I could, Sean. I just wanted to share this verse from Philippians 4:8. And it is, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worth praise, think about these things.
Yeah. And they've kind of done the opposite. Modern entertainment has done the opposite. And it's been shock value and, a lot of garbage. So that takes a toll, because, like I said, it's nice packaging with it's rat poison tied up neatly with a bow.
Yeah.
Nice, guys. Well, moving on to me, I have my fantasy. That's fantasy and sci-fi, I guess. I have my fantasy sci-fi novel. The Undecided is about halfway done. I'm working on chapter 10 right now. I want it to be a series of novels. So I know I need to think long-term about books down the road. So I'm going to be working on a wireframe for the overall plot, etc. I've got several other screenplays I'm working on. The plots are all organized either on paper or in my mind. So I'm planning on setting aside time to get everything more narrowly defined. And as a screenplay writer or an author, how I approach my responsibilities in terms of objective versus subjective is that it's like what you guys have been saying there. Every single creative element that's out there, regardless of what it looks like, the artist has an objective truth behind what they're doing, whether how great or how small it is. So I want to make sure that I'm thinking of those objective truths behind everything that I'm doing. But I also want to, I think the subjectiveness of it comes within the creativity, but then I eventually want to lead anybody who's reading or watching to that objective truth in the end. And that's where I would say the responsibility comes in, because it's like, I don't want to teach young kids like, oh, it's okay to get on Instagram and shake your booty in front of people and this and that. Like, I want to bring back like virtues and love and beautiful things, just like you've been saying, Sean.
Right. We've lost virtue in our culture. And the thing is, like, even though all of us here are Christians, the thing is that you don't have to. And I think that's the problem, is that what a lot of modern media says, well, you guys just want to make cheesy Christian films. And I think that, they're actually kind of right in their criticism, because I don't want to make cheesy Christian films. I would rather just make good movies, that has actual virtue in it. Yeah. Because, you look at, sure, there can be some themes and there could be a person in there who's a Christian or Catholic. But at the same time, I think that movies that show virtue is very good, because it's actually showing something that's necessary. I think one of the problems is when you do a mixture where you show somebody who's like strong and powerful and virtuous in one way, but then they're not in another way, and everything's kind of mixed together like a casserole. And so you have the truth part of it, and then you have the poison part, and they kind of mix it all together and go, see, isn't this great? And you package it together, and you do that enough times, and then you have a culture who actually starts to believe it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, fortunately. Very true.